Hey everybody, and welcome to the third episode of the Squared Slice, the wrestling show on the Smokes of the North channel. I am as usual, am your friendly neighborhood soda, joined by my Chewy, my right hand man, my Alex Riley to the Miz.
I'll take it. Alex Riley was over.
Yeah, and I love the name Dustin E. Dangerously. I dig it. How you doing?
Ready. I'm ready for anything that involves any sort of ECW talk. And since we're doing Invasion, I couldn't help it. I can't grow a ponytail and grease my hair back and wear a gross leather trench coat, but I can be Dustin E. Dangerously and maybe pull out a big phone while I'm talking. So.
And speaking of Invasion, we have our very first guest of the show from the Mount Schmodown show on our channel. It is Ryan Payne, man. How are you doing?
I'm good, actually, man. I mean, I swear, like all the times we've had you guest star on Mount Schmodown so many times, and when we do collaborate, I'm like, you know what? The fact that we love wrestling, it was bound to happen sooner or later. We were gonna finally talk about it, and I think when I saw like a few episodes, at least your first episode of Square Slice, I'm going, I need to get on here. I'll bide my time, but then when you said you're doing Invasion Angle, I'm just like, no, throw me in here. That was me peak as a wrestling fan. I mean, like the high point.
Yeah, so it's good to know. Soda mentioned that he was like, yeah, I think we got a co-host in a few weeks or a guest host, and he's like, but he really wants to be on the Invasion Angle episode. I'm like, all right, we got it.
Yeah,
we got it.
I'm in that sense, I am similar to you. Like, I really love wrestling. Like, as you can tell, I got the title belt, whatever. But when it comes to like actually the amount of content that I was absorbing and like enjoying living, it definitely was 2001. 2001, I'd say, is probably still my favorite year in wrestling. Most of it's because of the early part of the year, but also because I have a massive fondness for the Invasion.
Of course, well, just the influx of talent, right?
Yeah,
that almost made it great because not only did you have like rewatching and refocusing on this, which we're going to get into, is the mass amount of legendary WWE guys, right? Stone Cold, Undertaker, Kane, all these guys. Kurt Angle in 2001. I mean,
yeah,
how popular was that guy?
Dear Lord, yeah, it's amazing how quickly everyone flipped on him, and he was the most beloved wrestler.
It is kind of amazing, right? How fast it went. In 2 years, you kind of forget sometimes.
Well,
like how quick
they did a lot to build it. There's a lot to build that, honestly. But yeah, I understand. It went by so fast when it started.
So fast, but then you added the Invasion, and he was technically part of the good guys, even when he was a heel. People were just all over him during the Invasion. Like it was interesting.
You also do got to remember, leading into the Invasion, we did have the Kurt Angle comedy stuff, which we would see continue later on. But I mean, prior to the Invasion, you had what everyone talks about, the Stone Cold Kurt Angle and Vince McMahon stuff with the little cowboy hat. And,
and that came after. This came like after Triple H had injured himself. Like it was when Stone Cold was like doing his heel run, the 2-man power trip. They got rid of The Rock. They had nobody to contend with. And then at the time, the biggest contenders, I believe, to them were Jericho, Benoit, which we don't want to mention. Undertaker, Kane, and the Hardys, honestly. So
I'm just gonna let you know, Ryan. Like, we have made forthright how we condemn Benoit's stuff, but I mean, like, if he comes up in conversation, so be it. Like, we're
right. No, I understand.
Career.
I don't think, but I do know he doesn't show up that he's not even featured that much in the Invasion story angle, which is
he was injured at King of the Ring, and so Invasion angle.
So but I'm just saying, like, on the build up, because when we talk about the arc that led to the Invasion story, it technically kind of began when Shane purchased WCW, and then it bled into WrestleMania 17, which is when Stone Cold turned, and then during that time, Shane was bringing in WCW guys to invade or do guerrilla warfare on the WWF guys.
Right.
So
like that. Well, let's just start there. Shane McMahon showing up on the Go Home Monday Night, Monday Nitro, the very last Monday Nitro.
Yeah.
Now, from everything, I listened to Bruce Pritchard's son to wrestle with all the time, and he said, like, at that time, they obviously had no intention of doing an Invasion angle, because as you remember, like, not that long later, they tried that weird relaunch of WCW that failed.
Yes, I think one of the. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't want to talk too much here. Well, I mean, listening not just to Bruce Pritchard, but then also with, I think, like JR has talked, and even some wrestling YouTubers, when they've learned on sources. Yeah, and of course from their personal pains, and then when you rewatch old episodes, you do see that during the Monday Night Wars, Vince went out of his way to truly bury WCW.
Oh, yeah.
Like really treat every wrestler treat WCW as lower competition, and any wrestler that kind of jumped ship to the WWF, they had the hardest time trying to adjust because commentary
Jericho
was
being a prime example of that.
Yeah, Jericho, best example. But at the same time, like any wrestler that jumped from WCW who weren't big names like Jericho or had huge popularity, they were either treated as jobbers or just given like these quick introductions and then smashed by the competition, by the WWF guys.
That still is going on to a degree today. Like, look at Sting at wrestling when
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Like, he's 0-2 in his WWE career.
And the worst part was his first promo coming back, he had to say, "I'm not here to defend WCW." I'm like, at this point, the wrestling fans are very smart. And Vince I think it's kind of that point where Vince has to say, "Oh, he's a WCW guy. You gotta be shitting me. Come on, we're past this point."
Well, yeah, by that point, it'd been, 14 years? I think we had kind of moved on. Like, that whole rivalry was gone by that point. You won. Yeah. We get it.
Vince likes everybody to know he won.
Yeah.
Still does to this point.
But let's go right back to the very beginning. So what do you remember? Like, did you guys watch that final Monday Nitro live? Because I sure as hell did. And I was just like, because I'm just watching them the week prior. No idea that this was going to happen.
I think I only watched it for the Flair and Sting match. Then after that, I was just not interested. Even though in hindsight, I probably should have, because looking at old WCW, seeing how big Booker T had risen through the ranks, because the last time I watched, he was a tag team specialist and he had won the TV title. And that was the last belt I saw him hold until I learned, oh, wait, he was U.S. and world champion when that was over. I'm like, Jesus.
He defeated Scott Steiner in the final one. Yeah.
You forget the investment WCW had in Booker T sometimes. Like, we always think of it because he, came over from the from WCW, who's the big name that they brought in. And, even when you look at
the biggest star they brought in,
he was, especially in the beginning. And when you really look at I don't know, hierarchy of WCW talent. It's not Kevin Nash. It's not Goldberg. It's not all these people. It's Booker T. And at the time, that's kind of how it was looked at. But then when you really look back, you think of that last year and a half of Booker T. WCW was all in on that guy. He was
go back further.
Yeah. Oh, I would too.
Go back to '98. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, he was a mainstay especially towards the end, which we all know the end of WCW was a rough go. But I remember watching actually the WWF side. I remember tuning. I tuned into Nitro because I was a WWF guy, and I watched the Vince McMahon. Has a promo at the beginning of Nitro saying that he bought the WCW. And then I flick back. I'm like, I get it. And then I remember watching it on the WWE side where you're watching on the screen. Shane McMahon on the Titantron. And like in the ring freaking out, Vince is like, "Oh my gosh, he's there," which is almost even more fun.
Oh, totally. I was saying to you guys before we went on, I was fortunate when in 2000 when I finally got TSN up here, which is the Canadian equivalent to ESPN. They aired Raw live on Mondays, but they aired Nitro the next night, so I was able to watch Raw from the Raw side, digest what I saw, and then I was like, okay, I got to see what this looks like from the other end, and it was just intense. Like, you could tell in the sound of Shivani's voice and Mike Tenay and Chris. Shit, I can't remember his name. I do remember they brought him in. No.
I'm not sure. Bobby Heenan also I know Bobby Heenan. He was on commentary a couple of times.
No, Bobby Heenan was gone by that point.
He was gone by that point. Okay, that's it.
He'd been gone for a while. It was oh shit, I can't remember. It was a bald guy. But yeah, I just remember listening to them and they were in absolute shock. Shit, why can't I remember his name?
Don't worry, it'll come back. It'll come to you the week. It'll come back to you.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I remember just okay, what's going on? And then I didn't watch X7 live, but I do remember hearing the next night, he shouts out the WCW crew. And there's a funny story there that now is funny, at the time wasn't, that Bruce Pritchard, if I find it, I will share it with you, Dustin, because those WCW wrestlers almost got sent home that day.
Yeah, that's right. I think I remember hearing that story. Right? Was that happened during Raw? Right, the next day.
No, that happened during Mania.
Mania. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think fun with WrestleMania 17. I remember my brothers and I remember we begged our dad to buy that pay-per-view for us to watch.
yeah.
Of course, in exchange, we did of course, at the time we were kids. So I was like, yeah, we'll do our chores. We'll shut up. We'll do everything you say. Just please give us this. We got that. I remember watching the pay-per-view. And during, of course, at times before leading up to Shane's match, they did that turn to the skybox, and you saw WCW wrestlers there.
What's up, boys? Yeah. Shane doing that was a little weird. It's like, dude, you're white.
Even during the big Shane Vince story match, even though the focus should have been on the squared on the ring, they constantly kept taking the camera angle back to the WCW guys every time Shane got the upper hand, especially when he did that big coast to coast. Minutes after that was definitely with the WCW guys.
You got to admit the addition of the buying of WCW definitely added to the storyline. It was hot going in. That just made it scorching.
Yeah, it was funny. So I had to look it up just because I had to remember who the WCW wrestlers were. If this doesn't tell you something, so here's who they cut to at WrestleMania. So here's it was Johnny Ace, Hugh Morris, Mark Jindrak, Lance Storm. So yes, he's on the very, very far left.
Was he actually Was he actually wrestle, or was he just?
No, I think they were. I think they were seat filling.
They
were up in the balcony.
Johnny Ace at that time, he was actually head of talent at WCW.
Yes.
There's a whole lot of stories that are covered on there, but that's probably why he was there, because he was brought in by WWE not long after.
Yeah, and then Lance Storm,
WWE has definitely prospered from his tutelage.
Yeah, it's just funny to see this. What a roughly ragtag crew of guys.
But again, for what at that point, 13-year-old Matt Soda, I was just watching these guys on TBS. So for me, it was all right.
Seeing them on TNN or TNT.
Yeah, because I was
USA. USA.
I was a huge fan of the Natural Born Thrillers. Truthfully, that stable, I think that stable was a little too late. If it had come about a couple years earlier, they would have been bigger. Because that was a great stable, underrated stable for the amount of talent that was in there.
Right.
That was Mike Sanders, Sean Stasiak, Mark Jindrak, Sean O'Hare, and there was another one who I'm forgetting.
Yes, I was going to say Mike Sanders is a heck of a pull, but yes, he was in that.
Yeah.
I guess
only a WCW guy is pulling Mike Sanders.
Hey man, the John Dragons versus 3 Count versus
3 Count.
Filthy
3 Count. Oh my god, that
Starrcade ladder match, underrated.
Man, if we aren't talking late WCW right now, man, oof.
Yeah,
Mark Jindrak, Sean O'Hare, Mike Sanders, 3 Count.
In hindsight, total shit.
Oh, it is.
To be honest,
3 Count was good.
Good matches come out so occasionally.
Yeah, of course. Well, they're all trying to work their asses off for their money while Kevin Nash is hanging out.
Yeah. So after WrestleMania 7, they did try to do a relaunch of WCW, because originally they wanted to maybe relaunch its own brand, but obviously it completely failed.
Yeah, I think the plan was that WCW was going to air on nights, almost replace the time slot that Raw was going to be on, which was kind of, because hearing that plan, I'm going, that's Vince even burying WCW even more, because just a slight tad back to that simulcast episode of him buying Nitro and then airing at the same time. Throughout mostly that entire night, Vince was pretty much boasting his superiority. He wasn't. There was no thing of him talking about plans. I mean, I know character-wise, it's Vince McMahon saying he's beating his competition, but as a businessman, as Vince should be, he should be talking about, the plans I have for WCW. I'm gonna do what Ted Turner couldn't do for you. I'm gonna actually make you guys relevant. I'm actually he should have been talking about how I'm gonna make you guys actually big. Really boast it up. And then, and this is what if for fantasy booking, but it should have been the moment he did buy it, he should have been going out to the public almost every Monday, almost every night, almost every Raw, saying, "Listen, I know I talked down about WCW, but I didn't buy them just to crush them. I bought them so I can rebuild them," and then maybe try to get goodwill to the audience. So when that match did happen, that crowd would not have turned on Buff Bagwell and Booker T so fast.
Agreed.
Oh, man. That match is so bad. Don't. Oh, man.
No, I wasn't going to, but I would say the second match was actually pretty decent. Hurricane Helms versus Kidman, that was a good one. But
and look at what you guys had a decent run in WWF.
Right? If you had found a better opponent for Booker instead of Buff Bagwell, I'm pretty sure the match would have been a little better.
You gotta remember, Buff Bagwell at that time was one of the biggest stars of WCW.
And again, and it just goes back to the conversation we were just having. WWE only had so many guys coming over.
Yeah.
I mean, Buff Bagwell was in their top 5 most over WCW talent they had. So you almost had to roll with it, right?
Yeah. No, what I was going to say before you guys thought I was going to, praise that Booker T match. No, it's basically
Ryan and I would have had him jump through the TV.
Yeah. The only reason they bought WCW was the name and the library. That's it.
Of course.
Yeah. They didn't want to
buy the contracts. But that's why. And you know what? Understandable. And if you listen to Bruce Pritchard tell it, like it went from like this big deal and then all of a sudden nobody wanted it to the point where WWE bought it for like $2 million.
I think it was $4 million, but it's still
it was a ridiculously low number either way.
Ridiculously low number. It's insane how cheap they bought WCW for.
Yeah. So
but you got to think even leading up to that. Sorry, WWE had been buying, and that was the time of the DVD becoming huge. They were buying libraries left and right. That's when they were paying Vern Gagne for AWA. They were paying.
They wanted to get audiences back.
That's when they. Isn't that when they bought? I'm pretty sure, like just a year or two before, is when they bought Smoky Mountain from Cornette. Like they were buying libraries. They wanted them. They almost. I firmly do believe. So a good point for bringing it up. I don't think that Vince even cared half about WCW. He wanted that tape library.
Well, I mean, I'm sure. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say during the 2000s, around that time, during like mid 2000s, like most of the 2000s, and even let's say into the early 2020s, Vince and the company loved doing those little behind the scenes like the DVDs, like the rise and fall of ECW with Ultimate Warrior, with Eddie, stealing life, the Eddie Guerrero story. Like they love doing that kind of stuff. So it made sense them getting those libraries. So then there was a certain wrestler they wanted to do these DVD packages on. Mm-hmm. Then they had all that footage there, so they can obviously, like any company, re-edit it, only choose what they wanted to show the highlights of these wrestlers. Or like with the 2 different DVDs they did on the Ultimate Warrior, like one praising him and then another just lambashing him. Yeah. It's like they get to control the narrative, so then the audience will believe what they wanted to believe.
Well, of course, like that's what happened. The winner always dictates the future. I totally lost my train of thought again.
That's okay. We believe in you, Soda.
It happens a lot. Anyways, no, I was going to transition into the now I remember what it was. My favorite of those documentaries on past territories is the Triumph and Tragedy of World Class Championship Wrestling. That's the best one.
The WCCW and the AWA one are the 2 best.
Yeah, the AWA one. Wasn't a fan of the Mid-South one because they did it where they did interview, match. I prefer watching the whole doc and then having the choice to go back and watch the matches.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. The WCW one was okay. Then we get a little bit of teases here and there, and all of a sudden we get what I guess you could say what officially kicked off the invasion was Lance Storm showing up on Monday Night Raw in Calgary, which I didn't realize until I watched it.
And and the pop that crowd had, man,
which makes sense now. You're in Calgary.
Crazy. Yeah. But if you listen to something to Wrestle, Bruce Pritchard talks about that because like everybody always gets on like why Lance Storm, like why would they use him? And that's all Bruce Pritchard says. He goes, where were we? Everyone was going to love Lance Storm if he came out and kicked someone in the face. And like they love the guy.
You could have done that anywhere in Canada, but you could also gone away with it in the States because Lance Storm, while not like a big name at the time, he still had recognition from ECW and WCW.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, he held 4 titles in the last year of WCW at once? He held everything but the heavyweight title.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I was going to actually, Lance Storm, like what you said about him, WCW, he's definitely the equivalent of during the story angle, like at least during the Invasion storyline of Jeff Hardy, who before he won that WWE championship, like in the late 2000s, he held every championship in that company except the big title. And he got most of them during this Invasion story angle. Like going in, before the Invasion storyline pay-per-view, he was the light heavyweight champion before he lost it to X-Pac. Then he ends up winning hardcore championship during the Invasion storyline with
RVD. He won the IC title from Triple H earlier in the year.
Triple H.
Yeah. And even then, he was also European champion. Yep. So it's like with building up to that Invasion storyline, Jeff Hardy had grabbed every belt that was presented to him, and yet he was never. It was still. I mean, this is going to be being on a big Jeff Hardy tangent. It's kind of like they missed a golden opportunity to maybe have Jeff Hardy possibly be one of the highlights of the Invasion storyline, just like how RVD was on the side of the Alliance. Jeff Hardy could have been one of the young generation to represent WWF, especially for that the Invasion versus Team WWF's Survivor Series match.
He was though. I thought he was the highlight.
No, I mean Jeff Hardy could have replaced any of those wrestlers for the Survivor Series match.
Oh,
instead of Big Show. Yeah, well, he would have made more sense than the Big Show.
Oh, he could have replaced either Big Show, Kane, or Jericho in my mind. Honestly,
no, at that time, no.
Big Show wasn't in. Big Show wasn't in that 5-way. Big Show was Big Show and Invasion. Not an Invasion, he was not.
No, not Invasion. I'm talking about Survivor Series. I'm talking about Survivor Series. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. No, that's on me. I should have clarified. Like,
no, that makes sense.
This was me during my tangent. I'm already thinking where I want to end. I'm just not filling in the blank.
It was the first wrestling DVD I ever bought. Was Survivor Series 2001.
Look at that cover. Could it get any worse than that? Look at how terrible that is.
I like that. I like the logo. It's not that bad a cover. What I remember most is the poster that came with it.
Oh, back when WWE would put posters with everything.
When you're a 14-year-old teenager, I mean, you can't.
That was awesome. Oh man, look at that.
And Tori.
I think that's one thing. I mean, I think that's one other thing of the Invasion storyline angle that kind of disappointed me a little bit was, unfortunately, it showed one of the glaring differences between the WWF during the 2000s. I mean, going into the 2000s and WCW during that time was the way they used the women wrestlers, obviously.
Yeah, bra and pants match at Invasion.
Yeah, especially when it was
not complaining.
Obviously, teenager Ryan definitely not complaining. But I'm just saying, at that time, Trish and Lita were like in a big feud amongst each other. They were becoming stable wrestlers to where it built up. Like it was laying the groundwork for that main event match they would have on Raw.
Yep,
like
a few years later,
they were really becoming their own wrestlers, but they were still a little green enough to where the Brian Panties matches were kind of like they can still do those, still show off some wrestling ability while giving sex appeal to the crowd. So,
and speaking of Survivor Series 2001, that's where Trish won her very first WWE Women's title.
Yeah,
which
I remember at the time and going, really? But now it's like, okay. Yeah, but let's go back in time again. So we got all the lead up, we got all the wrestlers popping out of nowhere, and then we have the Monday Night Raw where it's revealed that ECW is joined the fold. And you had who did you have defective? So you had defective from WCW. You had Mike Awesome. You had Lance Storm.
Or didn't the Dudleys defect as well because they were.
And then from WWE, you had the Dudleys. You had who else? You had Just Incredible.
Yeah, because it's X Factor.
Because looking at that, there wasn't a lot of people. And
Rhino.
Paul Heyman.
Rhino, because this was a long time after King of the Ring. Yeah.
And the big thing was that Dreamer and RVD showed up. That was the big thing.
So later, exactly, same show. Later, this is from Wikipedia. During a tag match pitting Jericho and Kane against Lance Storm and Mike Awesome, RVD and Dreamer interfered and attacked Kane and Jericho. And then you had Just Incredible, Raven, Taz, Rhino, and the Dudley Boys come to the ring, and they joined RVD and Dreamer in beating Jericho and Kane. And then that's when Paul Heyman comes up and says, ECW's throwing their hat in the ring. Yeah. Later in the show, you're supposed to have supposed to have a big brawl, and then all of a sudden, revealed ECW and WCW are in cahoots. Now, I didn't actually get to see that moment live, but I rewatched it a couple months ago. I rewatched that Raw a couple months ago, and that moment, that episode, actually still holds up 20 years later.
It does. When the ECW guys show up too, it's because the thing about the ECW WCW is WWE bought WCW relatively fast. And then they just had to absorb their guys. ECW was already faded and purchased. WWE had already stole their quote-unquote good talent.
Hi, Taco.
How's it going, Taco?
What's up, Taco?
ECW had already, WWE already took all their good talent.
Yeah.
like you just said, the only two guys that debuted were RVD and Tommy Dreamer. And that's because RVD was like the one guy, to a degree, right? And that was because
they did invade 5 years
4 years. Totally. I got it.
Which
But
I didn't know
RVD,
about
the
for
only
the
reason
longest
why
time.
he held out is because he was the only guy that had the contract from Heyman.
Yeah.
So he had money coming in. And then you bring Tommy Dreamer in, and it was like, okay,
yeah,
this is cool because these guys are well known. And I always thought that was a big separation between the ECW, WCW guys.
Oh, for sure.
Was that they were already kind of known on the TV of the WWE.
Yeah. And so later that night, you had it was all under pretenses of Shane McMahon, Vince McMahon. They're teaming together to face, and all of a sudden, no, everything's turned around. Stephanie McMahon is brought out to be revealed as the quote unquote owner of ECW. And then boom, the invasion angle kicks off. Now, if I'm not mistaken, it's the following Monday where Vince McMahon is spending the whole episode trying to get the old Stone Cold back, because by that point, Stone Cold had already turned heel. We were seeing the comedy elements, but you needed the old Stone Cold for the invasion. And when he finally convinced him, it's got to be hands down one of the biggest pops I've ever heard. Now, hopefully it freaking plays the sound. No.
No.
That sucks.
This pop is so crazy, though.
And this was the Stone Cold heel music at the time, so it was still.
Which I was a fan of.
I like that. I actually like that theme though. It was much better than the one he gets later on in the invasion story angle. But I did like that because I liked that was one thing I did appreciate with the WWE at the time. They changed the themes of wrestlers to reflect where their characters were. That's why I like the fact that Rock had so many multiple different theme changes because it was him as a different period as a character. Same with Triple H, same with Stone Cold, same with Undertaker. I mean, Kane may have had the same.
Kane.
Yeah, I was gonna say Kane as well.
Yeah. You had you had Benoit with his Our Lady Peace song, which was a great song. You had RVD even got that treatment too, and he still uses that one of a kind. It's I
mean, even though Edge and Christian as a team, their theme was sort of the same, but their Titantron, or at least the way the music would have certain shifts into it. It wasn't until, of course, they break up, which I think it came after this
invasion storyline angle because Christian transitioned over. Yeah,
because Edge became Intercontinental Champion during the storyline, and then Christian,
and unified with the United States title, and they had what I think is actually decent enough ladder match at No Mercy that year between the two for the IC title.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, but so to go back, we're good. We've got Stone Cold showing up, hero. We're going into the invasion pay-per-view, which was all about unity. Now, with that pay-per-view, hands down, has to be one of the top pay-per-views they've ever done.
Yeah, it's fun. There's some filler in the middle, like I was saying that I watched it recently, like yesterday, and I was telling Soda off camera that the opening match with Edge and Christian versus Mike Awesome and Lance Storm, super fun. The crowd is into this pay-per-view.
Right, the crowd was into it for everything.
Balls deep into everything. They
even
love it.
Patrick versus Earl Hebner, which was a shit match, but the crowd was into it.
Yeah, and even the match. There's a match with William Regal and Raven. That's kind of a rough go. You can tell it's just a clash of styles.
Yeah,
crowd's still into it. And then you get that, and then you get what you're going to bring up is the awesome RVD Jeff Hardy match, which is still one of my favorite matches to this day.
And it's RVD's "I'm here to stay" moment. Like that was his breakout.
It was the breakout for RVD, and it was the proof that Jeff Hardy is what Ryan said. I know, it's such a good spot. And Jeff Hardy just takes it like a champ.
Yeah, man. Jeff, really looking back at this angle, I mean, Jeff, of course, I won't say he was reckless, but during those days, he was definitely not afraid to take those hits. But which did, of course, years later, when it had his ladder match against Undertaker, and of course the behind the scenes learning about that, you do see that Jeff was having was definitely going through some demons at the time.
Yeah, 100%. And who knows if at this time he was going through but no, hands down, that was the best match. But the match everybody was there to see was the inaugural brawl, which was WWE versus Team at the time. It was just referred to as WCW, ECW at the time. Yep. And when Stone Cold turned, it was weird.
It's awkward. It's weird. Even rewatching it, it's weird.
It's weird because he is a former WCW and ECW guy, and actually now going back and watching his WCW stuff, it's not bad. But he made his bones in WWE, and that actually was probably the biggest downfall of the invasion angle. Is a lot of the defecting that happened was by people that had no reason to defect other than, they got their taint in a twist or whatever. Like,
like Vince wasn't giving them the attention they just like. Vince wasn't giving them the respect or attention they deserve. That's why when Stone Cold made that turn at the pay-per-view, I was a little disheartening. And then, of course, rewatching, looking at that promo, he's talking about. He becomes the old Stone Cold. He's like, "Oh, you're bringing the Rock back. You're giving hugs to Kurt Angle. You're giving him gifts." I'm like, he tried doing that to you when you were your old self again. You said no. So the logic in there was very flawed.
Yeah.
Well, and the other
here's some people that jumped for no reason. So you have Christian. You have Ivory, which was a weird one.
Because she was WCW.
I forgot Mighty Molly did became part of the invasion.
William Regal did jump as well. Yeah,
William Regal, but he makes sense because he actually
because of the past of WCW. Yeah, but as me, I didn't know about his past of WCW. So when I watched it for the first time,
and that was
like made no sense.
Now, see, I was a fan of Lord Steven Regal, so I got it.
Yeah, but that's a huge issue with one thing that WWE does a great job at overall in modern times. This is 20 years ago, obviously. Yeah. They would not allow that where Ryan doesn't know that William Regal was not there. Because there's a lot of people, I don't think probably at 12 I even cared enough. Even though I'd known Steven Regal, I don't know if I cared that he was William Regal and defected, and I would have thought oh my gosh, because he was in WCW.
Right. I didn't know the differences at the time when I was coming into WCW. I'm like, Steven Regal, and I'm going, William Regal. He looks so familiar. And then
for me, why did they go with that's Steven Regal? What the hell? Yeah. But him made sense. But also you had who else did you have that randomly defected? Test, like I said.
Yeah, Test was the weird one.
Yeah, Test was definitely the weird one. But they gave him a pretty good push. I'm not gonna lie there.
I think Test is just one of them dudes that WWF and always loved, but dang, did he never click anything?
Didn't have it, is what
he doesn't. But man, he looked good.
Yeah, Terry. Why did she turn? Who else?
I don't know.
And obviously, the last one is Kurt Angle. That one made no freak. Yeah. I understand what they were going for, but no,
right.
no.
Right. Well, and the issue with the Stone Cold,
he could have been your biggest baby face,
right?
Because he was coming off 9-11. It makes no sense.
Yeah, it's so true. No, that's a good point. Well, and the thing about it, though, going back to the Stone Cold turn, it goes right to what Ryan said. At the time, Stone Cold had just put in 4 or 5 years of being the best dude on their TV.
Yeah.
And then we're supposed to associate him with his 2-year run in WCW as a tag in 1992 and his 3-month run in ECW where he wrestled 2 matches and just did promos because he was hurt the entire time. That is, and it's a very weird concept. And again, rewatching that Stone Cold turn is still just 20 years later, you still go, that wasn't very well done.
I can't remember who it was, if it was Pritchard or if it was JR, but one of them said, and this is the truth, the fans did not want to boo Stone Cold.
They never did.
No.
Never did. No. Even at WrestleMania, they didn't want to do it.
On that flip side, I really love the 2-man power trip thing. It's just unfortunate Triple H got injured early.
Yeah, because I think the rumor was he was supposed to have a role, obviously, in the invasion storyline.
He was supposed to be the Kurt Angle role.
Yeah. Which I think would have also, maybe it would have worked. Because it would have also slightly referenced his time in WCW as Terror Rising, though. But even then, But even then, that is kind of like a big pull, deep cut for fans to notice.
That's a deep cut.
But what I mean by the Kurt Angle roles, I don't mean the Kurt Angle that turned on them. I mean the Kurt Angle that faced Stone Cold at SummerSlam. Kurt Angle, he was supposed to be the guy in the invasion.
I think good and bad. It was obvious Kurt Angle. He really got that big face pop from the audience, though. And some people were saying it was too early for Angle, but at the same time, I'm like, no, this is a good trial run to see if he can really stand in the spotlight with the wrestlers. Because during his first year, they were going really hard on him, but there was still some pushback from the audiences. So I love the fact that with the whole comedy bit with Stone Cold, we are seeing more and more of his personality. So then when we get that build up to him losing at SummerSlam because of Nick the referee Nick Patrick, and then kidnapping Stone Cold, demanding a rematch in his hometown of Pittsburgh, PA, and then winning the championship, getting that hometown pop, losing it, and then the Milkamania,
yes, which is still, I'd say, the most played moment from the Invasion, Milkamania.
Milkamania is so funny.
Perfect because it's a flip on what Austin did just 2 years prior.
And it worked.
Yeah, and did you hear Kurt Angle tell the story? He had to leave immediately after the show to go on a plane, so he's on a plane cross country, drenched in stinking milk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god! I mean, he, of course, the one of the times I came across him talking that story. He did make this funny comment to where one person was literally that you could smell. He was he made this one nice snide little joke, you can literally smell pasteurized milk on me when I'm going down the aisles.
Yeah,
but I do Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, just the Kurt Angle button that we were putting on it. It is amazing when this is all hindsight, and you guys, I'm sure, know too, is when you hear interviews, everybody will say no wrestler got how to do this faster than Kurt Angle.
Yeah, no,
and
100%.
When you rewatch this again, he's only a year and a half in. Yes, he's trained for a couple of years.
His first match, I still love him talking about his first match.
He's just all over.
He instantly just catch him cut in the crowd. Okay, boom.
Yeah.
He fucking got it.
He it's amazing. Again, rewatching this, it's just gosh, this guy's been in this for 2 years, and look at him. Yeah. He is just what a monster. And so it's always that hindsight whenever you hear Kane says it, Bruce Pritchard says it, that nobody took to the business faster and better than Kurt Angle did.
The closest for in-ring, I would say, would be Ronda Rousey for in-ring.
True.
I thought Ronda was awesome.
No.
It's a good point. So, Ronda, kind of like Kurt, she did have guidance, obviously, so she was definitely able to grasp.
Yeah.
But I think with the promo ability, it's definitely apples and oranges between the two.
But Ronda Rousey's first match at WrestleMania 34, match of the night, blew everyone away. It was okay, she can do this.
She did. Yeah.
It helps to be a natural athlete too.
Yeah. Now, so from there we had obviously the Invasion angle. We had the lead up. Now we're coming into the biggest pay-per-view I'd have to argue the biggest pay-per-view of the year at that time, SummerSlam 2001, where they brought The Rock back to be the face of the Invasion, to face Booker T for the WCW title. Now, this, I'd say, SummerSlam 2001 is the third best pay-per-view of that year.
I'm definitely not disagreeing with you on that. Yeah. SummerSlam really did build everything together. Because
I would say WrestleMania is number one, hands down. You can either interchange the Invasion or No Way Out for me.
I was just going to say the No Way Out that year is so good.
3 Stages of Hell, hands down. But look at the card that's on the SummerSlam 2001 pay-per-view. So in the opener, you had Edge versus Lance Storm for the IC title.
Yes.
You had the Dudley Boyz and Test defeating the APA and Spike Dudley. X-Pac versus Tajiri for the Cruiserweight and the Light Heavyweight Championship, which I believe would unified them.
And this is such a weird X-Pac time too, by the way.
Yes.
He's that post DX. He's in his weird trunks. People are oh, this is X-Pac.
Yeah, and he's got that X-Pac heat that go away.
Yeah, he does. He definitely does.
One of the worst things I will say about the Invasion storyline angle is that the moment they were getting into this, it was one of that weird times where WWF was kind of with heels and with these heel and faces story angles. X-Pac, he had his whole X Factor group to where big X-Pac heat. But now this Invasion storyline angle in WWF is all of a sudden you cheer for him now because he's representing the company.
That's why,
but nobody cheered for him.
They were never really giving a lot of reasons for us to cheer for them, except for, you decided to stay with the WWF, so you're a good guy. No, you really need to give more. It didn't surprise me why guys like Albert, X-Pac, why should I be rooting for them? Why should I be? Because at the time, I was not a fan of Edge and Christian, so why should I be rooting for them? And then, of course, with APA, even though I was half and half on them, there were times where I'm these are supposed to be the leaders, especially when before they were bringing The Rock back, when Test, they did that little mini storyline angle where Test and Shane remained, they still had that friendship they had.
Yeah.
And they're all why are you talking to Shane? He's WCW. You shouldn't be talking with him. Is he trying to bring you? And then they do that SmackDown to where everybody gives him a beatdown in the ring to test his loyalty.
Yeah, is this the one where the
Right.
APA put them through the table? Because there's one where I remember the AP, or no, it was O'Hare and Jindrak. They just kicked the shit out of them, and
It was O'Hare and Jindrak.
tables. Yeah,
Yeah, it was O'Hare and Jindrak. But they did this big promo where AP was confronting Test, and they were grilling him about his friendship with Shane. Like, you shouldn't be friends with him. And then they didn't believe that Test was loyal, so they gave him a beatdown. And then, of course,
and
the week following, Test was like, I'm loyal. And then the big moment came. I think it was like a championship because AP were tag team champs, and then Test turns, they lose it, and then he turns to the Alliance. That was like one of the good mini storylines that worked. But at the same time, it made me question, why the hell should I be rooting for the APA if they treat their own wrestlers like that?
See, I was a big fan of the APA at the
So was
time
I.
myself. But I'm going to say this: Test still has the best big boot in the business.
Damn straight.
It is so
For
good.
a long time, that was my finisher in video games.
If he was ever able to, if they ever allowed him to work more on that pump handle slam, that could have looked out. It could have came off so much cleaner than how
his flying elbow that he used at the beginning of his career was smooth.
Dude,
that was his feature for a while.
Again, he didn't. He was missing something though.
For sure. Now back to the pay-per-view. Now that Xbox Tajiri match is the only non-Alliance versus WWE match on the card. It was 2 WWE wrestlers.
Yeah.
Tajiri never turned.
And
then the next match after that, you had Chris Jericho versus Rhino, and what I would say is Rhino's best match in WWE he's ever had.
You are correct.
Yeah. And then the next match, we had a rematch for Invasion. It was RVD versus Jeff Hardy in a ladder match for the hardcore title.
Yep.
Surpasses, in my opinion, the Invasion match, and that was a great match.
Yeah,
gotta love when there's a major angle around the hardcore title.
Yeah,
and ECW, it makes sense. RVD is ECW. Right. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. But even then, but for someone like me who did not know much about RVD and he was mainly being associated, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. But then when you look at his past, you realize, yes, he did the hardcore match, but he also fought for the main belt. He fought for the tag belts, and I think at times for the TV title. So he was definitely more than just
times. He held the TV title for 2 years, Dustin?
Yeah, it's like 2 years.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying. But yeah, TV title. He was a triple threat champ. He was a triple crown winner in ECW, wasn't he? Yeah. So the fact is that he encapsulates all three of those. When you're an ECW fan, and then he's just simply being relegated to hardcore. To an ECW fan, it is kind of insulting. But as I said, as someone like me who was mainly WWF, it made sense. He was a great introduction. So then after, when he was still around, you start seeing him have these great matches for the Intercontinental title, for the Tag Team Championships, and later becoming the ECW, then WWE champion. Yeah. So it was a great platform. So, I mean, when you're a first-time fan watching this, it makes sense to be introduced to RVD that way. But like with you guys, if you already knew about RVD and then you had that knowledge coming in, it's a double-edged sword.
Here's the thing. I'm more in your camp on that, Ryan, but I did get introduced to RVD prior to his debut because of that really bad ECW wrestling video game. So that's where I knew him from. And of course,
such a bad video game.
I'd see RVD on the things, and I did start watching the TNN show they did, but I don't recall RVD on there.
Yeah,
but when
that was getting towards the end.
I got it because of, like, he's the best ECW has to offer, and it's like I'm watching him. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like I get it.
Yeah, and ECW and RVD did exactly what he did in ECW. And Soda knows this. I was a ECW kid, and I was watching the pay-per-views. My mom would order them for me because they were only $10. Yeah, it was awesome. My mom didn't have to spend $30. You can only spend 10 on ECW. She loved it. RVD, and you guys obviously know this in hindsight, he was better than everyone there.
Yeah.
I mean, he just was. And when he came in on the Invasion, he take out the Dudleys because they're a tag team, but he was better than everybody. I mean, he just was.
It really was, obviously.
It was obvious that he was
obvious
better.
He was the crown jewel of the Invasion. And that's why in No Mercy 3 months later, he's in the title match.
Yeah.
It definitely made a lot of sense why he and Jeff were putting on so many great matches. Like what you said with the Invasion story. The constant back and forth with that hardcore championship. Right. Because these were two men you definitely knew could put on a great show. Next to And I will say one underrated match from a great match from the Invasion Story angle was Kidman versus X-Pac.
Yes.
That match itself, I mean, Kidman, I remember from WCW, big time, favorite wrestler. So when I didn't see him get highlighted enough in the Invasion storyline, I'm going, you gotta be kidding me. This man, you should be putting him on the same part. Have him go up against Jeff Hardy a couple times, or go up against Matt Hardy. But then, of course, learning later, Kidman was kind of unsafe in the ring at times. So you could tell
to retire the shooting star press because he legit gave Chavo a concussion.
Yeah, that's right. Concussion, I believe, like a broken nose.
Yeah, it was when he landed, his knee hit him right in the side of the head.
And let's be honest, Kidman wasn't hitting that move every time either.
Yeah, I mean, but it was pretty.
It was pretty when he hit it.
Yeah.
Even WCW, he was always like he was like 50-50. You know, sometimes he nailed it perfectly, but then when you give him those big high-profile matches that Russo put him in, he was really not hitting them right, which is why I understand why he was using like a power bomb at times for a finisher.
Yeah, right. The Sky High. But there were 3 more matches on that card. You had what could have been a great match, but really wasn't. It was more of a squash. The Brothers of Destruction, the WCW Tag Team Champions, versus DDP and may he rest in peace, Chris Canyon. Yeah. Right. Man, that was a whimper of an ending to that storyline.
I think that's we forget. We talk about Booker T being brought in. DDP was definitely one of the big stars in WCW that was brought in and buried.
Fucked him up. They fucked it up. Like
it was just a bad story.
What, 5-6 months earlier, one of the faces of WCW, everyone loves him, the people's champ of WCW. He comes over and he's a stalker.
Yeah, I defend WWE on a lot, but that was a bad choice.
DDP should have been like some of the other wrestlers. He should have just kept his contract and waited it out, honestly, because his time in the Invasion storyline angle, after he gets that terrible squash, he gets squashed badly in that match against Sarah, then Undertaker's wife. Then they tried to rebuild him back by giving him the championships, but it's kind of too late. And then they turn him into this kind of
which
TV,
I like,
spokesman with the whole like.
I like that.
Me too, because it turns out it was just a heightened version of him.
Yeah,
really. I know. Yeah, with the DDP
look at him now.
At the time, me who loved that DDP of WCW, especially him, the Insider, and of course,
the Insiders.
Oh, why are you? I'm like, why are you doing this to him? And then the only belt he ever gets is the European Championship.
Yeah. Well, that in the WWE Tag Team titles.
You know, and I think a partial issue to that too is, you know, so the WWE brought in how many guys? 20, 30 ish. It's you already got your established guys. You know, DDP, yes, again, very saddled with a bad story, but he seems like a guy that easily could have fallen off to the wayside, like he did.
For sure.
You know,
you do.
In reality, you should have pushed like Booker T.
Yeah,
but I
think with DDP, Vince really overlooked something with him. The fact that he started off as a manager, and then he started wrestling into his mid-30s, and then started doing those even the wrestlers who jumped ship from WWF to WCW saw DDP as Macho Man, for Christ's sake. His view of Macho Man to the Outsiders, to find the NWO. The fact that they put DDP, somebody who started so in his 30s, he could have been pushed to the mid. He could have been pushed to the mid card. But the fact that there were certain wrestlers in that company that were taking chances on DDP, and it was paying off in dividends. To where in their later years, DDP was like one of the top guys on the card. I mean. Yeah, despite how his run went. Like his run wasn't all great, but you know.
And I'm sure you heard how Macho Man made him, right?
Yeah.
Arn Anderson comes into the locker room of that match and says, "Hey, Macho, what do you want to do for the match?" And without even looking up from his boots, says DDP's going over with the finish.
No, I believe DDP said best in the talk to Jericho. He's like, I think I'm gonna take the diamond cutter.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
And DDP after the show called him and thanked him because Macho Man did not have to do that. Macho Man by that point was a legend.
Yeah,
and for that seal of approval was everything DDP needed.
And then you do see the angles that DDP was able to go through. I think what I'm trying to say with Vince was Vince could have looked at DDP as an opportunity to be a locker room leader of the WCW brand, because the fact is he started off older. He could have been one of the wrestlers who could easily adjust and transition. He had the fanfare from WCW to where he could use him and maybe some good profile matches. That's why I think the Undertaker DDP angle, if DDP wasn't a stalker and he simply just came, wanted to
Right.
a big dog in the yard, him and Undertaker could have been a great feud going into the invasion storyline angle. Just take away the stalker aspect.
Well, that's funny. That's kind of how the stalker thing came about. Was they wanted DDP to come out and go after the big dog, but they just made him a stalker.
I know.
They had eliminated that little detail.
But again, he was WCW and he was the bad guy.
And that's the thing. Like, first, Vince.
That's why.
Yeah,
you guys must have heard this over the years. Vince doesn't like wrestlers that he didn't make.
Of course.
And at this point, he's never going to get out of that mindset. We've seen clearly what he does to wrestlers. He brings into his own damn company. I mean, I don't want to get too much into the big. I do that enough with James on our podcast.
There's 2 matches. We still have 3 pay-per-views and 2 matches left on this card to cover. So the final 2 matches, the main event, of course, because he's returning, was The Rock defeating Booker T for the WCW title. Good match. Good match. But the Kurt Angle versus Stone Cold match
is so good.
Besides the disqualification, wow.
It's very good.
They did a great slow build. Great story building in. And then in those last final minutes, Stone Cold was selling big for Angle. Angle really showing the psychology of the desperation of him wanting to get that belt for Team WWF. And then, of course, all the WWF wrestlers keep getting knocked out. And then Nick Patrick comes in for that disqualification. And then putting the ankle lock on Nick Patrick. Like that, I'm watching it. That crowd was in a
so hot. They loved it.
The last time I heard a crowd that hot was Spring Stampede 1997. when the Hearts returned to Calgary.
When the Hearts returned
the last time I heard a crowd that hot for a match.
Yeah, they were meant. Yeah, and and everybody always thinks of Stone Cold. Whenever you think of like great Stone Cold matches, what was the end of his run was like 2003, right?
Yeah.
You don't get too many in the 2001, 2002, 2003 because he was so beat up, by then, and he just didn't wrestle as much either.
You had the great Rock match from earlier in the year,
which is what everybody always remembers is the Rock match.
And they don't talk about it, but the 3 Stages of Hell match against Triple H and No Way Out, one of my favorite matches of all time.
And this is the other one. This is great.
Yeah, and of course, let's not forget, we did gloss over it earlier. Stone Cold and Booker T in the supermarket. That was earlier in the invasion.
Yes, that's so fun.
But post invasion, but it was still a great fucking moment.
Was it post invasion? Oh, that's right.
Yeah, because this is when Ric Flair came into the company and said he bought Shane and Steph's stock, and so he
the consortium, which I still don't know what a fucking consortium is.
But the way he was saying that word is awesome. Like the consortium was me. Woo!
Oh my gosh!
Another good impression, dude.
That's good.
The part of that always makes me is Vince's.
the ear pull. I love the ear pull. It's so funny. It's such a Vince.
I my ass off on that.
Yeah.
God.
But okay, so now we're gonna jump to the next pay-per-view, which I think that's a really cool poster. The Unforgiven 2001, where it's like the 3 faces of Austin on the poster.
Yep.
Dude. Yeah. And this is a weird pay-per-view. Like, this is where the pay-per-view quality kind of started to go down for the invasion. You had the Dudley Boyz versus Big Show and Spike, Hurricane and Lance Storm, and the Hardy Boys in a 4-way elimination match for the WWF Tag Team titles.
Weird.
Perry Saturn versus... Sorry?
No, I was going to say that match didn't make no sense at the time, especially no matter how I try to build the story. But
look at the competitors in that. That's a Hall of Fame, right?
Great competitors. But
just a cluster.
Yeah, and I forgot that Big Show and Spike were a team. And then after that, you had Perry Saturn versus Raven with Terry Reynolds, which I believe came about because Terry broke Moppy or someone broke Moppy.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
100% what happened.
The Mop, yes.
Yeah, Moppy. Oof. Only Perry Saturn was able to make that work. Then you had Christian beating Edge for the Intercontinental title not too long after he turned on Edge.
Yep.
That storyline should have been better than it was. Like the match quality, I mean.
But again, you're splitting up a heel tag team's tough.
Yeah.
I remember at the time, I still disliked Edge and Christian both, even when they were wrestling each other.
Well, by that point, Edge, you could tell, was being transitioned to be a face because he just will come off King of the Ring. And I myself, because of TLC 2001, was very much behind in their corner.
Sure.
Because King of the Ring, Edge, of course, winning. Of course, Christian.
I thought Christian was going to turn then.
Yeah, but they didn't. I do appreciate they did say anything in the Bane story angle because that's when they were bringing Edge's stock up.
Yeah.
And what better way to get Edge more of a sympathetic babyface than to have his kayfabe storyline brother at the time turn on him, cut that promo, because I remember that promo. He explains that their whole lives has been Edge and Christian, E and C, Edge and his brother. Like it's a good performance from Christian, talking about how he's been seen as the he's been an afterthought. Like he comes
Marty.
Yeah,
he was Marty Jannetty.
Yeah,
of course. But then you do see with Christian, he was more than Jannetty. But at that time, you could easily pair him as Jannetty, or at the time, even like Matt Hardy, even though he's the older brother for the Hardys, Jeff clearly was the shining star.
Yeah, totally.
And Matt was becoming kind of like an afterthought. And of course, Matt did prove later on in the career that he proved people wrong. No, he is a star. It's just compared to Jeff, who's doing these death-defying stunts.
Yeah,
you tend to have to focus on the one who's more technical.
Yeah. And then continuing with the pay-per-view, the Brothers of Destruction defeated, to be honest, a tag team I really loved at the time, Chronic. I loved WCW Chronic.
Yeah, they didn't have a great run because that's the other match where like
WWE,
well, it wasn't that the thing too where like you know how
over WCW teams that didn't last long.
No, but they could.
Oh my god, I loved him in WCW. Oh my gosh, I was so into
But in the
I've always been
WWE,
a huge Brian Clark fan.
Yeah,
but
they were there for 2 weeks.
They got the Public Enemy treatment from Brothers of Destruction that night.
Oh yeah,
they got Taker and Kane pretty much got told to go out there and beat the piss out of them.
Which is weird because of Bryan Adams' history with the company, right?
Right. Well, and both of them's history with the company. I mean,
that's right. Brian Clark, Adam Bomb.
Clark,
that's right.
Yeah, they both had multiple characters and runs with WWE, and Taker and Kane went out there and beat the shit out of him, and you never saw him again.
Yeah. So next you have an underrated gem, RVD versus Chris Jericho for the hardcore title.
Yep.
That's like okay. Let's see what the kid can do with a big time player.
Yep.
And then after that, you had the handicap match of The Rock versus Booker T and Shane McMahon for the WCW title.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. This one is like this.
Booker T did win that match, right? He got the championship back, didn't he?
No, The Rock did. The Rock lost the title to next pay-per-view to
Jericho, I believe. Yeah.
And this is a weird one for where it is. Rhino defeating Tajiri for the United States title. Now, at this point, it was Tajiri with Tori Wilson because she had left the alliance.
Yes,
that's right.
I do remember. Yeah, she's defected because at the time Tajiri was kind of like a assistant or just more of a liaison to William Regal. Then Tori and her, being at Tajiri's side did cause to where to where she defects later on because she gets treated like crap by
defected around the same time as well.
Yep. Yes. And talk about a dude with some longevity in the WWE was Rhino. Yeah. That guy wrestled like the entire decade, and you never remember that he was like on the roster. That guy was there for like 10 years.
What is he provided some highlighted moments for the WWE?
He did.
I mean,
which I don't have, but that spear on this not the go home SmackDown, but the SmackDown before Unforgiven, where he put Jericho through the set, which was done so they could get a new set.
So awesome.
But that's the same. That was used that was constantly used in SmackDown's opening.
The opening intro.
Yeah, opening intro, like early SmackDown before they changed it. And no, actually, from most of the Ruthless Aggression era of SmackDown, Jericho being gored through that SmackDown set was used. Either you'd see the whole thing or you see a quick clip of it.
Yeah,
that was provided.
Yeah, and again, the reason why it stayed is because Rhino was under contract for so long. Yeah, the guy was with. It's shocking how long that guy was with WWE. And again, like you said, he was. I mean, when he started in ECW, he started super late, like 99, 2000, and he was like 22.
Yeah, but he was also on tours with Edge and Christian in Canada, and there's some funny stories there. If you want to hear one, we'll listen to Edge's Hall of Fame induction speech with Rhino.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is weird, but at that time, like nobody had ever seen anything like Rhino spearing Jericho through that. Titantron. Like, I mean, we'd had Titantron shenanigans, but nothing like that. Like,
well, has anybody ever seen a dude built like he's 5'10", 300 pounds, and he's built like a brick shithouse?
Yeah.
Like the dude looks like he'll kill you.
Last thing you expect from him is to be that agile, him to be that fast in a way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, obviously, let's come back to him in later years. But yeah, Rhino when he first entered, oh yeah, great stuff.
Yeah.
And then of course you had the main event, which was the crowning glory of the show. Kurt Angle defeating Stone Cold Steve Austin for the title by submission. The SummerSlam match was better, hands down better, but this one had the emotional payoff of Jericho bringing the title home in his hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And his whole family comes in the ring. Karen, his brothers, sisters, everyone was in there. Yeah. Done because they wanted that uplifting moment, because this happened 12 days after 9/11. So they did that because they wanted that that moment.
Jeez, it was that close.
Yeah, that's also kind of weird to remember that the 9/11 happened during this invasion storyline angle. So one of the weird times.
They were the first sports program to come back afterwards. Yeah,
it's 2 days, right?
2 days.
Yeah, just 2 days. And this was the one time where, Vince dropped everything and like, no, we're going to entertain you, be patriotic. It's a great show. And Lillian Garcia doing that in that national anthem is
not still listening to national anthems, still the best one.
Yeah. I mean, Lillian Garcia at the time, of course, she was a ring announcer, but when they let her use her voice, I'm just like, you can't do anything better. I mean, the fact that she provided the voice, the fact that she provided the vocals to Tori Wilson's theme was a nice added bonus too.
What?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
I found out when on her show, Talking Glory, when she had Tori Wilson on there, they had this great conversation, and then they brought up the fact that she's in the background singing Tori Wilson's theme, like her first theme at least, her first theme before she got the first one, But her main thing that accompanied her, I mean, like that was Lillian Garcia, and I went back to listen. I'm going, wow, I did not know that. She didn't get. I don't think she got credited to it or not. It was just very to learn that.
Oh wow, yeah, I did not know that. That's pretty cool. So coming out of that,
Chasing Glory. That's her project. Chasing Glory, not Talking Glory. Chasing Glory.
Coming out of the invasion angles, when all the weird shenanigans started happening, you had Kurt Angle lose, I think, relatively quick. It was like 2 weeks after he won the title. You had more WWE guys transitioning. This was a weird time, but we're going into No Mercy, which is a pretty good card. You have to open it up. You have the Hardy Boys with Lita versus the Hurricane and Lance Storm with Ivory and Mighty Molly.
I think that's kind of one of the reasons why it had Ivory. Maybe the fact they wanted to get some more wrestling from Lita and Trish. Maybe having someone like Ivory, who's a vet, be on the WCW side, could give more wrestling matches. I mean, it still didn't make much sense. But looking at it, though, what we're gonna do? Constantly have Lita and Trish and other women do constant bra and panties matches against Tori and Stacy.
Well, that's the thing. Like, WCW was never known for women's wrestling. I don't think they ever had one.
Well, they did actually earlier. Yeah, when they had Medusa on there, they did have that little tournament. They had like Bull Nakano. Yeah, they were trying to incorporate Japanese Joshi wrestlers with WCW, but the problem was they didn't treat the women's. I think with the women's heavyweight championship with that much, because Medusa never got to hold it. One of the reasons why she was there, because she was a big women's wrestler, and they only used her for like 2 years, and then later on they bring her back as a ballet. Then she wins. Then she wins the Cruiserweight Championship, and that's all her time was in WCW.
Yeah, but it does go off that though. WCW and ECW were not known for any women's wrestling, so it really made it difficult for
ECW. Had Beulah versus what's his name?
They used it for storyline purposes only. Yeah, and that was it.
Which
they weren't just doing women's matches to have women's matches.
Bill Alfonso, that's the guy's name.
Which was kind of funny though. I mean, of course, ECW. What's up, Ben? How you doing, man?
How's it going, Ben?
So then you have Tess versus Kane. Not a bad match. Tori Wilson versus Stacy Keibler. Can you guess the type of match?
What Brian Panties?
Close.
Lingerie. Wait. Lingerie. Yeah, lingerie.
Lingerie pillow fight.
Now, the next match had the makings of a classic. Unfortunately, it underdelivered. Edge versus Christian in the ladder match for the IC title.
Yeah.
Wasn't bad. It could have been better, though. And they both said it could have been better. And then after that, you got for the WWF tag team titles, the Dudleys versus Big Show and a new partner, Tajiri.
Oh, yeah.
And I forgot this one happened. The Undertaker defeating Booker T in a singles match. I forgot that happened.
That's a good match too.
Yeah.
That's one of my Booker T matches that I really like. Is that Taker him No Mercy match?
It is a great match, and I not to get on the negative side again, but then you do start to see a shift in Booker T's role in the Alliance.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he was one of their leading top guys with the WCW Championship. Then of course, he has his mini feud with The Rock, and then of course during, like you said, Unforgiven, leading into No Mercy, and down the road, Vince started relying more on WWF guys leaving, joining the Alliance, and maybe having a few WCW guys joining WWF, not focusing on who was actually there. So where Booker T, he literally became mid-card champ. He was not mid-card, but like a middle on the high tier. So, but still, him versus Undertaker was a great match. It's just you just kind of see his position start to slowly fade away.
He was like Ricky Steamboat in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you see him as a top player, but every time, no matter where he's placed on the card, just never wasn't given that. He was never given that rub.
And then coming out of that match, you had Chris Jericho defeating The Rock for the WCW title, which is funny that he won his first WCW title on WWE. But this is also the start of Jericho's heel turn.
Yes,
which fully cemented at Survivor Series.
Yep.
But this was a hot storyline at the time. I do remember. And if you
Rock
hear Jericho go back, to hear them in international tours and the stuff they were doing to each other, I think it's Jericho's second book where he actually has pictures that he took during a match in somewhere in one of the Middle East countries, and it's The Rock who's just got like this look on his face, like it was like one of those like perfectly caught moments during a match. Great stuff. And then to end the show.
Oh wait! I forgot. A great moment in the Invasion storyline angle. Rock and Jericho, that promo they did on Booker, Rhino, and Stephanie.
Yes.
Oh yes.
SummerSlam.
Oh my lord! I remember the time going, "Oh no, he did it!"
Yeah, that's one of the greatest.
I remember part of the build to SummerSlam, because
bottom feeding trash bag hoe.
Yes. Yeah. Or at least at the time he was making fun of that best promo. I don't say best, but good promo where he's making fun of Steph getting breast implants,
which is so good.
God.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so good.
And then sidebar, who had a crush on Stephanie McMahon? I did. I still do.
I don't think I did.
I did. I think because as she was so good as a heel, I just hated her guts.
I think I did too.
I mean, the $1 Billion Princess at the time, I could have had a crush on her after the angle when they tried to, when she got introduced throughout the Undertaker trying to marry her thing, and then her and Tess to film in this relationship. I'm like, you know what, this could work into something. And I would have loved to see her more trying to be the innocent to counteract Vince being the power greedy guy. But then, in hindsight, I do like that. But in hindsight, I do love that angle to where she turns on Vince at Armageddon against Triple H, because she made a lot of good points in her promo on the Raw afterwards. She did.
100%.
To me, I'm just like, you let Triple H lie to everyone that he drugged you, took you to Las Vegas, had his way with you, just so you can look innocent to your dad. I'm like, long con though. Good job. But as a teenager, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Makes no sense, but you know what? It was great. It was great because McMahon handled the era and some of my favorite stuff, because that's what really got me. That era is what made Triple H my favorite wrestler.
But the stuff he does, but then of course seeing how Stephanie with her character, the McMahon Helms machine, her winning the women's championship, which really broke the straw on the camel's back for me. I'm like, nope, I don't like her, period.
Yeah.
So when Jericho just starts objectifying her, demeaning her, of course, looking at it, it wasn't as tasteful. But as someone who purely hated her guts, I'm like, yes, treat her this way. She deserves it. She's earned it.
You're right. It is distasteful, but still, it's one of the better
it's
promos.
It's still so funny.
Yeah, it's still good.
You're right. Maybe I should take you out to dinner. I hear there's a Hooters just across the street from here.
Yeah. No, like I said, at that time, maybe it was because of the breast implants and I just didn't realize it, but I had, and I still kind of do have a crush on Stephanie McMahon.
I think the thing was, at the time, Trish was also on TV, so when you saw her breasts compared, and then we realized Stephanie had breast implants, I'm like, I'm sorry, but they're flaunting Trish. And I'm just like, Stephanie, you're still covered up.
Yeah.
when you're a
But
teen, this is
Stephanie's
teenage.
breast
This
implants
is
were
teenage me. This is teenage.
outrageous.
Just anybody watching, this is teenage Ryan when it comes to comparing
Yeah,
these
right.
two.
This
Teenage
isn't
Ryan.
us now. This is we're trying to remember what we were like at age 14, and
Right.
it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, the final match: Stone Cold versus Kurt Angle versus RVD. I remember the storyline.
Such a good match.
I still remember at the time they were teasing that RVD was becoming the face, and Austin hated it, and that was great.
Oh yeah. Those
They
backstage where he talks up RVD, but then cuts him down behind his back to where he wants RVD to feel conflicted going in on it. And he's like, "Look, we're gonna play this fair. I mean, we just get rid of Angle, then it's me and you 1-on-1." And then when he leaves, he's talking to the others. He's like, "Make sure RVD does not perform like he does. Make sure he does not come 100% to his match, like almost as if he wanted to have RVD crippled." And then I think the week before into the pay-per-view, RVD got wise and he's like, "You know what? If I take that belt, I'll be the face of the alliance, not you. And you have to respect me."
I remember.
And the thing is
Sorry,
because of this, is people believed RVD could win this belt.
Yeah.
Like it like when you kind of look at it now, you can see it. Like even us talking about it's like, oh, Kurt Angle and Stone Cold and RVD. Like he doesn't fit at the time. But at that moment, people firmly thought RVD could win that. I just watched that match like 6 months ago, maybe. That crowd is all in.
Do you remember the
look at this outsider?
Raw? Do you remember the moment of the go home Raw? RVD is on the top corner, and you've got Austin on the ground in one end.
Oh, that's
and
right.
Yeah,
Yes.
on the other, and you're like, okay, who's he gonna splash? And he fucking splashed Austin.
Austin. Yeah.
Yes,
I remember that match. I haven't watched it in a long time.
Because again, that just goes back to what we said about like 2 pay-per-views ago. RVD was the standout. He was the one guy that people thought could hang with the big boys.
And
He did surpass, like you were saying, Ryan. He surpassed Booker T a little bit for a while here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Booker was the guy for the first half. RVD became the guy in the second half. And when you really watch the match, I mean, they have it built like in it where they literally get you on RVD. Like RVD is going to win this. Like holy shit! Like nobody can believe it. You should. There's even a point where obviously I know he doesn't. And now that we're older, we get that RVD is going to take the fall in that match. It only makes sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're like in it. You're like, oh man, they have this people believe in it. They believe that he's going to win this match. And,
yeah, because I do remember during the invasion storyline angle, almost every belt on both sides was changing hands like weeks, within a month at a time. So I think the fact they kept changing belts, like hardcore belt, the light heavyweight belt, and then unifying with the cruiserweight championship, the IC belt changing hands, the US belt changing hands before it was retired, the European belt changing hands, the tag team, both sides tag team belt changing hands, and then of course
light heavyweight.
Yeah, and then of course seeing Rock take the belt and then Kurt Angle get the belt. I think it's because the belts were changing hands so many times, it added more into the idea that RVD was gonna win it. But then when you do see Stone Cold winning that belt, walking out with it, where you do feel like, oh, like RVD was so close. Like if you were in that crowd, you're like, he was this close to get it.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. And I remember just watching that match on tape for the first time. I was like, holy shit. I'm going to skip over the Rebellion pay-per-view because those European pay-per-views at that time, they were filler stuff. There wasn't really anything good special that happened. But now we're coming into the final pay-per-view of the Invasion angle, and that is Survivor Series 2001, which again was the first wrestling DVD I ever owned. Probably the Survivor Series I've watched the most in my life.
Yeah.
So we had to kick off a match that was actually booked on Monday Night Heat because I remember when this happened. Christian defeating Al. Oh, yeah, there is one thing we got to mention going into this. Kind of hints towards the winners. Everybody was holding a belt, was safe from the losers team going out of business. So that's why Christian defeated Al Snow for the European Championship.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, no, I do remember that. That was mentioned quite a bit during the pay-per-view.
That's right. That's right. Commentators are like really almost not shoving it down our throats, but because at the time, I don't know. Yeah, but also like building into that, they start showing. I mean, especially after when Kurt Angle lost at No Mercy, then of course they did the whole the Alliance said, well, no WWF guy's going to turn on you guys, and they do that Raw to where Kurt Angle is given a belt and he hits Vince, and then he's the new guy on the Alliance, which kind of buries both RVD and Booker T at the same time, because then they go back, they both go to underlings, and then on the WWF side, you still have Jericho and Rock on their little feud between each other. And literally, WWF had no leader outside of Vince McMahon leading them.
Taker, maybe.
Taker joined up, but Taker was just more of the guy who got pushed on him, not really wanting to step up to the leadership. He was more this was him as the American Badass, where he was more interested in knocking heads.
I love the American Badass. Yeah.
But going into it, I'm just saying, like, and I'm going to bring back my thing on Jeff Hardy. It was around that time. I think Jeff, this is where kind of like, just like how RVD was being pushed up on the side of the alliance. In hindsight, Vince should have taken Jeff and maybe pushed him up, or have him be someone willing to prove himself more, to wanting to take on Kurt Angle out of vengeance, maybe have him lose, but still have that never say die attitude where, like, oh, if I can't beat Angle, guess what? I'm going to fight Booker T. Yeah. Like, have the audience really get him on his side. So then when that Survivor Series 5-man match came up, and maybe have him replace Big Show and put him on that team.
Yes.
So then he could have been seen as one of those leads in there. Like, have both Jeff and Matt try to step up. Honestly,
yeah. To be honest, if this happened later in their career, it probably would have been Jeff Hardy. To be honest,
you're right.
Yeah, you got to think this is 01. Big Show was still a hot thing in 01. We still have that.
Sort of.
I mean, he was
demoted and come back. Yeah,
I know he was flipping flopping with tag team and stuff, but at least he was moving around. And
yeah,
he was still coming off WCW.
In the last moment, considering he was in just random tag teams, getting inserted into the main event.
But man, they were just always on him. I mean, he had been for 15 years. They just always found something for the guy.
Well, Big Show was always proven to be a reliable guy. That's for sure. He's reliable.
There you go. That's a good word. That's why. Just reliable.
To keep going on the pay-per-view, we had the second match, which is William Regal versus Tajiri in a 3-minute match. All right.
They had a super fun feud. And they carried that on to like that tag team.
Yeah,
later.
like Regal was really like at his heelish best. Like, you were always under me, and then when you see Tajiri like really showing moments of like not being like not standing up to him. I think Tajiri was never like be disrespectful to Regal, especially when he was a liaison to him. But then seeing Tajiri like really fight back against Regal, that got some good pops from the crowd, especially on some certain SmackDown Raw shows.
For sure, because everybody loved Tajiri. He was such a great character at that time.
Yeah.
And then so next you had what I actually think is an underrated match on the card: Edge defeating Test to unify the U.S. title and the Intercontinental title.
I was never not a fan of that. I was not a fan of unifying those belts, honestly, but I understand why they did it.
You had to. It would have been too many belts otherwise.
There's
I
too many belts all the time.
The US title. I think that could. Well, I mean, a part of me could have said that could replace the European Championship, but then in the end, they merged the European Championship too. So
the WWE title, yeah. And then next up, we have a really good steel cage match to unify the two tag team titles: the Dudley Boys versus the Hardy Boys. Now, remember, most about this match is the spot at the end because it set up the the Jeff versus Matt match in the next pay-per-view. Jeff Hardy's about to win it. He decides to go for the Daredevil move and do the Whisper in the Wind off the top of the cage and misses. And the Dudley Boys win.
And misses brutally.
Escape or pinfall, and it was like, ooh.
Yeah,
wow. Great.
Because doesn't he do like he's gonna escape and then he turns around and just goes for it and loses the match?
That story. I think I remember commentary was kind of like, "Don't do it, Jeff. Just get out. Just exit." I think it was there. We were like, "Don't do it. Don't do it, Jeff. Leave the team. Don't do it."
Yeah.
Hey, if he was my teammate and I was Matt Hardy, I'd be pissed off too because the goal is to win the match. So don't flip in the ring.
Yeah, it's like if the other team wins, we're out of a job, dumbass.
Right.
So, and after that, we had the Immunity Battle Royal. Do you remember who won that?
Oh my God. Was it Lance Storm? No. Lance Storm lost because they did an angle of him trying to get his job back.
All I remember is that
this up for a long time.
Extremely random names, and it's Test.
Oh,
Test. I can't remember who he beat up, but he put himself into that match. And the other participants were the APA, Lance Storm, Billy Kidman, DDP, who fell, Albert, Taz, Perry Saturn, Raven, Chuck Palumbo, Crash Holly, Justin Incredible, Sean Stasiak, Steven Richards, Tommy Dreamer, The Hurricane, Spike Dudley, Hugh Morris, Chavo Guerrero, and Funaki. Now, isn't that a murderer's row?
Isn't that just telling you that there's too many random talent on the roster?
Yeah, and the match was under 8 minutes.
Yikes.
And then next we had a 6-pack challenge for the returning WWF at the time Women's Championship, where Trish Stratus, who at the time completely out of nowhere, defeats Ivory, Jacqueline, Lita, Mighty Molly, and the debuting, poor time to debut for the Alliance, Jazz.
Yeah.
I was shocked when Trish won the title. I really was, because I hadn't really seen her wrestle at that point. So it's like, why are they doing this? And then, of course, you see where she went later on, and you're like, okay, makes sense.
That's why.
Of course, my money was mainly on Lita, because she was one, other than Ivory, Jacqueline, and at the time I didn't know much about Jazz, she was at least one of the wrestlers who could, and of course with Molly, obviously before Molly went to her like actual like good run, Lita showed at least a little more like athletic ability to carry that championship and put on wrestling cliches and put on wrestling clinics. Trish at the time didn't not much. I mean, she was still a bit greenish. So when she did win that championship, I literally scratching my head. But then we do see her evolution and her growth.
Yeah. I thought Lita was going to win it, because at that time, Lita was one of the hottest wrestlers, not just female wrestlers, period.
Like commodity, top
exactly.
wrestler.
She was.
I mean, especially like with that, I mean, to build on what you're saying, one of the hottest wrestlers, when Ric Flair shows up, becomes partner, and then they do that brand split, Lita's the only female to be drafted.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
People forget what a big piece Lita was to the Hardy Boys.
100%.
Like we keep bringing up like Jeff Hardy, and I know he's involved in what we're talking about, but man, I remember those. I remember babysitting a girl who was a couple years younger than me, and she only watched wrestling to watch Lita. I mean, she was into it because Lita. And then I remember, I'm like, gosh, we always think of Matt and Jeff Hardy, but we forget them few years where Lita was constantly around. And gosh, people were all about it.
And we can't ignore Lita was not just documentary, but you were right, an integral piece to them, because the Hardys, they were in WWF for a while. I mean, they had so many different pairings. They were with Michael Hayes, then to Terry Reynolds. It wasn't until they had Lita on their side they started to skyrocket. They started to blow up. I mean, for Christ's sake, they were on a Chef Weird commercial. I remember all three of them.
That's right. Yeah, the thing about Lita was she appealed to everybody. Like, she appealed to the women because look at her. She looks different. She's doing great stuff.
Yeah, she's
for
badass.
The guys, especially again for the teenagers, she's one of the guys. She's not too hard on the eyes, and plus she's a great wrestler. Like she had everything for everyone.
Right.
Yeah, and also to build off one thing about Lita is that I mean, going back to myself as a teenager, I remember my older brother, my little brother, we would always argue amongst ourselves with some of the women wrestlers whenever we had video games, who we'd pair each other up with. My older brother, of course, him being the oldest, he wanted to get with Trish, but I'm like, fuck, I'm going with Lita. Lita's my girl.
Same. Yeah, no, 100% for me as well. That match, surprisingly, for a 6-pack challenge, only lasted 4.5 minutes.
Shocker.
Yeah.
Disappointing.
That's women's wrestling 2001.
Yeah. The next match was also 45 fucking minutes. Team WWF versus the Alliance. Team WWF, The Rock, Chris Jericho, Undertaker, Kane, and Big Show. Defeating the Alliance. Now tell me what sticks out here. Stone Cold, Kurt Angle, RVD, Booker T, and Shane
O'Mac.
Yeah. That's a big testament to how they were fucking booking the Alliance.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way to say
anybody. That's why I'm pissed off about DDP.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You could have had DDP, you could have had RVD in there, and you could have had who else would you put in there?
But not at this time.
I just
remembered
after
6 months of DDP not being relevant.
Yeah.
Wait, I just remembered one thing from the Invasion storyline angle. Sean Stasiak, his character, every Raw is always trying to prove himself, but then he's always constantly making one of a joke. It would have been hilarious if for somehow he becomes the 5th member, but then he just gets eliminated within like 1 minute. That could have played a good storyline, a good long running joke with his character. Yep. But even then, in those moments, like Sean Stasiak, he's like the constant butt of the joke, always being thrown out of the ring by The Rock, always being stunned by Austin, always being like slammed by Kurt Angle, who was at WWF at the time.
Someone steps on the side, he runs headfirst into a wall. I think another time he actually went under the ring.
I was just saying he went under the ring. That's the one I think about.
Like if Vince had actually had a sense of humor, or at least had this smart idea of doing a smart joke, he could have put Shawn Stasiak as that fifth member. So, and then maybe before that match starts, he tries to start earlier, gets his ass knocked out, and then the bell rings, and then Shane's like, "I'll just take his place."
Well, that would have been interesting.
That would have been a funny. I mean, some could have said, "Oh, you would have buried him even more." Like, no, that's like it's a long running joke, a long running gag of his character that Vince made, and then maybe you could have repackaged him later on the WWF, because early WWF wasn't he part of PMS as the man meat?
As the man meats. Meat. Yeah.
So,
I remember him in WrestleMania 2000, the video game. Weird.
Yeah.
It's meat. Yeah.
And I wasn't really watching at the time. I'm like, who the hell is this?
I know. What a terrible name.
Yeah.
It was
Definitely
ridiculous.
yeah,
But
God
it
bless
could have
him.
been very good. Like if you had to repackage and rebook that, and that happened to Shawn Stasiak, you could have given so many good. You could have had like this great. Other than Lance Storm trying to get his job back, you could have Shawn Stasiak out of desperation wanting to get his job back. So then you have two WCW guys, one with past history with the WWF, to where he's like, "I've been with your company before. Why aren't you getting me back?" To where maybe you could have repackaged and rebooked him to be like a vicious heel, to where he's attacking mid-card guys.
Well, we got Planet Stasiak out of it.
True, Planet Stasiak was fun.
In all honesty, I was just going to say if I was a WWE guy, I wouldn't want Shawn Stasiak back. So
No, fair point. Because
I mean, yeah, some of the
think that's why he got fired in the first place.
Yeah.
But
again, though, too, this is like again, it's going off what we're obviously concluding the conversation right now. Is this match was built to be this huge exclamation point? It's the payoff, and
the match itself was good. It's
good. It's good. It's just the payoff's not there.
It was muddled because of where you ended up with the invasion.
That's exactly it.
And at the same time, if you look at all 10 men in there, only 2 of them are pure WCW and ECW guys. Everyone else is just WWF.
Over TRVD, yeah.
And it's
like,
again, it is a good match, but your payoff is just not there.
You were excited. I remember jumping up and down at the time, like it felt like a big deal, but in hindsight, it was definitely like a wet fart in church.
And at the same time, I remember the go home SmackDown. Vince is teasing that there's someone in the alliance who's going to turn on him.
I was just about to bring this up, because as we get later on,
the mole
after Jericho finally turns heel and gives The Rock that finisher he had for a little while, the breakdown, I think it was called, which is now known as the skull crushing finale.
Yeah.
It was Austin Rock left. Kurt Angle comes in with a bell, and you're like, oh shit, he's gonna hit The Rock. No, he turns around and hits Austin and reveals himself to be the mole. Which you're like, okay, I get why they put him in the alliance then, but still, geez, it should have been RVD.
Yeah.
It would have made way more sense if it was RVD, but either way, great ending to the match. The Rock conquering the alliance. Vince McMahon standing gloriously. WWE's won the day. Now we get to the Raw right afterwards. And we get the return of the Nature Boy, which pretty much to me signifies the end of the alliance. When Nature Boy says, "I am now part owner, bitch." Yeah.
I mean, they kill it right away. Which, no offense, they probably should have. I mean, that's probably the route to go.
Yeah, and that Raw afterwards was great because you had Shane McMahon who accepted his loss like a gentleman. You had Stephanie McMahon try to grovel way back into the
exactly.
But the best one was Heyman when Lawler returned.
Yep.
And they escorted out. Heyman tried to jump over the table, and Lawler just
that is such a good spot.
Oh yeah,
of watching Lawler potato him and Heyman just going for it and taking it. That is so good. It is so good.
Did you know why the history started?
Yes.
Because back in the day when Heyman was in the Memphis territory, I don't remember who he was managing. But there was supposed to be a scaffold match. And Heyman, the whole time in the North, was, I'm okay. I'll be fine. I'll do the spot. I'll need you, blah, blah. The day of the match, he goes, I can't do the spot. And they go, why? I'm afraid of heights.
Yeah.
And Lawler, after that, was like, I fucking hate him.
Yeah, Lawler.
It was a Lawler match, and it was a huge angle, too.
Yep.
Yeah. But Return of the King. Great. I'm glad the King wasn't there for the invasion because Paul Heyman and Jim Ross for the invasion was the perfect combo. It
was super fun.
Perfect combo. Yeah. Heyman's still one of my favorite commentators.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, I did like it that go home SmackDown when Heyman just cuts into Vince.
Yes.
And of course, he spins so much truth of Vince. Yeah, so much truth to Vince. Like, you could be at this level, but you're not. Mainly because of your own damn ego and the choices
you're a billionaire, but instead you're a millionaire or something like that. Yeah.
That's a and then comment. Of course, I mean, most of it's shoot, but then you get into the kayfabe parts where he turns to Taz and says, "Look at Taz. He was a killer. He was a wrestler. Now look at me. He's just some fat guy sitting on the desk." And then just leads to Taz coming in, choking out Paul Heyman to where he's just like, and then Vince does that line, "The alliance will choke." Well, no shit, they'll choke because you booked them that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, what are your overall thoughts of the invasion? Like I said, like we've pretty much said, at the time we were all into it. Yeah. There were a lot of great highlights, but we could pretty much be on agree, like as a whole, it was a failure.
It is, but it's not totally Vince and WWE's fault. I mean, they brought in a ragtag group of ECW guys. Like we said, most of them already in the company, besides the two main ones, RVD and Dreamer. And Dreamer's a great guy, but there's nothing about Dreamer that's not ECW. That's just how he is.
Exactly.
That's what he's known
Even
for.
When you're watching him now.
He's the guy. He's the ECW guy, and he lived off of it.
It's just like Sting is the WCW guy.
He is, and Dreamer is the ECW guy.
Yeah,
but it crushed them not having the guy when Booker T is your number one, which is fine. And DDP, which we all in agreement they messed up, is the number two or number one.
Number two. Booker T and DDP should have been like the head guys, honestly. But
and Booker T was, but there's nobody else there.
No, I mean you had RVD rise up, but it wasn't the same.
But the WCW crew is, and it even not even hindsight, even during it, I remember as a kid, I'm like, I don't think I ever once got behind a single one of them dudes.
Oh yeah.
Besides Booker. Like, I mean, Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Hare and Stasiak and oh man, what do you do?
By the end of the angle, I was very underwhelmed with those guys because, like I said, when they arrived, I was hyped. But by the end, it was like, okay, they're just making them jokes. Well, Lance Storm being the only exception at that time.
But you really look at it though. I mean, could you imagine them building that group up to face Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, Undertaker, and Kane?
Well.
It's just not there. No. You know, it is what it is.
Yeah,
you know, it's almost good that they did it quick because it almost makes you look back on it with a little more fondness because they kind of jammed a whole bunch in a really small time frame.
Yeah, and like we said, it pretty much ended poorly, but there were a lot of great matches that we talked about in this. Most of them involving RVD.
That's the thing about it. It might have been all over the place, and the storyline might have been goofy, but we just went through those pay-per-views, and man, I remember quite a few of those good matches. I mean, because they were good for a reason.
Like that whole entire invasion run with the tapes and the DVDs, that's probably the time I watched the most on home video.
Okay,
because I was just so into it because of how great the matches were.
Sure.
I mean, the biggest legacy of the invasion obviously is everyone saying like what could have been, and many people talking about what like of course like plans like best laid plans falling to pieces. But even then, overall, the invasion, I was thoroughly entertained, but at the time, but yeah, looking back at this, I'm going like, you know what, there could have been more to do. And then at the time, I'm going, you know, I'm glad some of these wrestlers, some of the WCW guys, held off, like did not like wanted to continue being paid by their old contracts, because I would have hated to see how Vince would have treated Hogan, Nash, Scott Hall, Sting. Goldberg, if they were part of the invasion.
Goldberg would have gone the worst of it.
Goldberg really would not have been treated as the monster during the early days of WCW.
And he wasn't when he finally joined 2 years later. Up until SummerSlam 2002, they totally underutilized him. It wasn't until that SummerSlam we were like, this is the beast that we all know. Yeah,
they tried to make him as a regular wrestler, which was the problem. He was never a regular wrestler. I mean, how was it that even though we complain how the inmates are running the assignment at WCW, even they understood it would be too crazy to have Goldberg wrestle more than 5 minutes, more than 3 at least.
Right.
That's why his match against Kevin Nash at Starrcade, it had more shenanigans and wrestling involved because they knew Goldberg. Yeah. And then, of course, the fact that at the time Goldberg was also one of the reasons why Bret Hart had to fucking retire.
And still holds it against him too, which, you know, rightfully so.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That it shows exactly like Bret Hart. I mean, yeah, he's a professional, but this was more in the fall of WCW trying to tell Bret, don't worry, we're going to make sure Goldberg does not go this hard with you, or we're going to make sure he holds back. Yeah, we saw that kick. Did it look like he was holding back? No.
Goldberg's never held back. That's his thing.
Yeah, for sure.
He still doesn't.
Even now.
He's 50 years old. He doesn't. He's 50 years old. He doesn't hold back.
Himself before a fucking match. Like, are you kidding me, man? You say it's not about you,
it's so stupid.
But your attitude's pretty much telling you it is.
Well, same thing happened at WCW when he got all hyped up and punched that window of that limo and lacerated right into his big push. Dummy just starts going to town.
He returned once briefly at New Blood Rising, I believe, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they turned him heel. They tried to make this big angle with him. Worst promo of him just eating fucking paper. And we're like, yeah, this is the monster that I was nuts about.
It is amazing. It is amazing. Hey, he's very Ultimate Warrior-like. But, that was fun.
Yeah, my throat hurts, but it was fun.
Yeah, right? So much water. I ran out of water. Now I'm ready to drink some more. So
yeah, who knew we could get an hour and a half out of the invasion, huh?
Yeah, that was good. I like strolls down memory lane. That's why we started this.
Exactly. So Ryan, thank you very much for joining us, man. It was great to have the third voice to talk it over.
Thank you, Ryan.
Where can everybody find you, man?
I definitely appreciate being on here. Thank you.
Of course.
I mean, people do part of the Schmoes in the North channel. I do a YouTube show with my co-host Ben, and also with our third talking head John, called Mount Schmoedown. We do an ESPN kind of like 30 for 30 breakdown and discussion on careers of trivia players of the movie Trivia Schmoedown. I should have led with that first. If any of you are familiar with the movie Trivia Schmoedown, our show is basically we do discussions and breakdowns on player careers. This past month, and this July and this August, we've mainly been talking about the factions of the Schmoedown. I know this upcoming week, my co-host Ben, they're gonna be talking about another faction going on in through this continual month. And then also for wrestling, right now it's on a break, but I have this podcast with my buddy James Shimo, which is mainly his baby. It's called the Wrestle, Ramblings, and Rages podcast. We have it on Spotify, Apple, Podbean. We like I said, we're taking a break, but if you just go and listen to our past episodes, we do rant a lot about Vince McMahon's terrible booking, but we try to do positives and negatives on wrestling news, wrestling shows. We try to be objective as possible, but as the ramble part is, our emotions go off the handle at times.
And it's very easy to with all the shenanigans going around nowadays, but that's not this show. Yeah. And Dustin, what about you? Where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Dustin Dubuque, not Dustin E. Dangerously. And that's about it. Just follow me there for everything movies, wrestling, and movie trivia Schmoedown. That's about what I focus on my Twitter. So go there. That's all I need.
And as for myself, you can find me on my Instagram and Twitter at soda_the_saxman. You can find me on all the shows on Schmoes of the North except for Mount Schmoedown, which I will actually be stepping in as the co-host role because Ryan will be at the Schmoedown tapings, so I will be hosting along with Ben for that. I think we're doing the Suspects is what we're doing. I think
we did the Suspects before. I think you're doing the Mercs.
That's the one, the Quirky Mercs, which
yes.
I just knew it was one of the ones with the blue logo. So yeah, you can find me there. You can find me Saturday nights producing Let's Talk About Star Wars, where this Saturday we're having our third edition of Star Wars Alien or Not. And this is going to be the lineup. We're going to have our host Taco versus Ben versus Marie Wilson versus Paige Fabretti. And myself and Gold Leader are going to be hosting the show.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, good luck with that.
It
is a lot of fun, and I'm usually the pot stirrer on the show. Because I'm behind the scenes, I can do whatever I want. So yeah, I've gotten them pretty good. So you can find me there. You can find me on Schmoedown on Canada. You can find me on Shooting the Breeze, Recap the Past. Just pretty much, I have no time anymore. So like seriously, I last night would have been my only night off, and I went and saw Suicide Squad.
That's
great movie. But yeah, so thank you very much, Ryan, once again for joining us on behalf of myself.
Thank you, Ryan.
And Dustin.
Thank you guys for bringing me on.
Anytime, you're obviously welcome back because you're like us. You love wrestling. So if you love wrestling, you got an open invitation on the show. So yes, we will see you next week then, folks. We will see you next week on the Squared Slice. Topic to be determined. All right, talk to you later, folks. Have a good